The Marvel Cinematic Universe has been going strong for over 10 years now. There's a reason it's the highest grossing movie franchise of all time. These characters have become icons in their own right, and the whole world loves many of their movies. But not all of them. Some of them, whether fairly or not, get maligned by the public and get cast down from the Infinity Wars and the Winter Soldiers of the crowd. But I'm here to talk about one specific movie today, and why it's not as bad as you might remember. Age of Ultron was the second Avengers film, released only a couple of years after the first. It brought back all of our favorite Avengers into the same film, and even introduced some new ones, so it should be even better. And financially, it did about the same as the original, making over $1 billion. But at the time, it was received with mixed enthusiasm. And since then, the outlook on the movie as a whole has soured significantly. And if you ask a majority of MCU fans, they'll either tell you that it's one of the worst in the franchise, or just have completely forgotten about it. Now, I will in no way say that Age of Ultron is a perfect movie. It's not. But also, it's probably not as bad as you remember it being the last time you saw it. And the reason why is two simple words. Phase 3. Age of Ultron is not only the middle of the Avengers franchise, but pretty much the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe as a whole, which might be part of the problem. Almost nobody's favorite part of the story is the middle. I mean, how many people do you know that say that Two Towers is their favorite part of Lord of the Rings? I'm sure that they're out there, but in far fewer numbers, which is likely why Age of Ultron suffered at the time. Knowing what you do now, you can look back at it within the entire framework of the story. With the miracle of context, we can appreciate this part of the superhero saga more than we even realized. The movie starts with the Avengers going after Loki's scepter at the last Hydra base. That already has references to the first Avengers movie and Winter Soldier. And then after we meet the twins, Scarlet Witch shows Tony a vision of his worst nightmare, and it is eerily familiar. We see all of the Avengers lying beaten on an alien battlefield, seemingly all dead. Then Captain America, with a last breath, says to Stark, "You could have saved us. Why didn't you do more?" And then he looks up to see a portal opened up to Earth, with alien forces pouring through. This premonition of destruction is what leads Tony to create Ultron in the first place. Stark says that Ultron is to be a suit of armor around the world. To which Banner replies, "That sounds like a cold world." And Stark says, "He's seen colder." He insists that this very vulnerable blue world needs Ultron to protect it from the threats beyond. And after seeing what happens, he might have been right. There are numerous lines in the movie that allude to the future, but there are also many plot threads that go on to influence the movies that come after. Age of Ultron introduced us to two brand new important characters in Scarlet Witch and Vision, even if Vision didn't show up until it was almost over. But this film also gave us our first tastes of Wakanda, other than the existence of vibranium itself. Wakanda gets a name drop in this movie, and we get introduced to Ulysses Klaue, and the fact that he has stolen large amounts of vibranium. I guarantee you that there are people out there that completely forgot that this was set up beforehand, or at the very least, couldn't tell you where in the franchise it was set up. But obviously this not only facilitated T'Challa's introduction in Civil War, but also the entire Black Panther movie that was such a smash success. It started here. But speaking of Civil War, the second Avengers movie also does a lot to further the antagonistic dynamic between Captain America and Iron Man. They fought in the first Avengers movie, sure, but here they really start to butt heads and realize just how ideologically opposed they really are, even coming to blows at one point. And I think that might be part of the pushback on this movie, the relationship between payoff versus setup. The reason so many people love the original Avengers movie, and the reason it's so satisfying, is because it's basically all payoff. It takes everything from the first 5 movies in the franchise and meshes them all together. Literally the only setup in that movie is the fact that the Avengers exist now, and I guess the post-credit scene. But that's the reason so many season finales are so good on your favorite television shows. They deal with everything that's come before, and it's pretty much 100% payoff. And when it's done well, they don't have to worry about setting anything else up either, because it was done beforehand. That's why the Avengers works. Age of Ultron is in a strange scenario where it doesn't deal with as much payoff and is also saddled with a lot of setup for the movies that will be in Phase 3. Which is why some people don't like it as much and don't find it as satisfying, which is a valid point. And that's also a reason a large contingent prefers Civil War, referring to it as sort of an Avengers 2.5. Since that movie deals with a lot of payoff, it got to deal with the payoff of the conflict between Tony and Steve, and also the conclusion of the Winter Soldier storyline, partially because Age of Ultron carried those through. The third Cap movie starts with the Avengers team that Age of Ultron leaves off on. Now, Civil War did have its own setup to worry about with the likes of Spider-Man and Black Panther, but I think they better handled those with the lessons that they learned here in Age of Ultron, about maybe putting too much setup in one movie. One such thread the movie propels is for Thor Ragnarok. Now, while that finished product maybe didn't turn out the way they thought it would, there are certainly lines in the movie that allude to that eventuality. Such as when Banner says, "Where in the world am I not a threat?" Obviously, for anyone that read the comics, signaling space. Or Thor's dream where Heimdall says that he will be their destruction. These things are obviously telegraphing the next films, but maybe aren't as homogeneous within this finished product. However, there are aspects of the film that fit in shockingly well. One of them is the culmination of Thor's vision arc, creating the vision in the process. Thor sees the Infinity Stones, and then he says that he sees a whirlpool of destruction that sucks in all hope of life, and at the center of it is that, pointing to Vision's Mind Stone. Fast forward to Infinity War, and what does the climax come down to? What's the last one left that Thanos has to get? The Mind Stone, being the center of the whole ordeal. But that's not all. People praise Doctor Strange for saying that we're in the Endgame now, but go back and watch Age of Ultron. Right after Ultron attacks for the first time, the team is talking and Tony has to defend his secret actions. He talks about the Battle of New York and the aliens that nearly destroyed the Earth. Then he says, "That up there, that's the Endgame. How are you guys planning on beating that?" And Captain America looks at him with all earnestness and says, "Together." Tony says, "We'll lose." And Cap replies, "Then we'll do that together too." Sound familiar? And lastly, when our heroes take a break at the farmhouse and Fury talks to Stark, he tells him about the nightmare he had at the beginning and says,
"It's almost dead, Nick. Felt it. The whole world too. Because of me. Wasn't ready. I didn't do all I could. The end of the path I started us on. Watching my friends die. You'd think that'd be as bad as it gets, right? But nope. Wasn't the worst part.
The worst part is that you didn't.
all of that is exactly what happened in Infinity War. These movies are much more connected than people realize, and will probably have even further connections as we move on to future films. When you bring up Age of Ultron, most fans will agree that it had a pretty great trailer, but the finished product lacked anything worthwhile. And while I can admit that there are certain inherent flaws to the movie as it's structured by itself, when you look at it within the broader scope of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, it has more merit than you might expect. The miracle of context allows us to see that Age of Ultron not only has to deal with the thankless job of propelling the greater story, but also has far more significance than any of us might have thought. So if it's been a while since you've seen the second Avengers film, I urge you to go back, knowing what you do now. And to paraphrase Thanos at the end of the movie, not let other people decide for you, but to do it yourself. Thanks for watching.